Twins vanished on cruise ship 1 year. Later, a suitcase washes up on shore. There's a story that's been making the rounds online. A story so terrifying it feels like it has to be a movie. For nearly a year, the case of the missing twins had been a cold, empty void. The laughter of two toddlers, once the soundtrack of a family's life, was gone, replaced by an agonizing silence that haunted every single day. Hope, once a burning flame, had faded to a fragile ember. But then, the story takes a turn. On a desolate stretch of the North Carolina coast, a place known for its rugged beauty and treacherous currents, a fisherman spotted something half buried in the sand. It was a large, waterlogged suitcase. Something about it just felt wrong, an object of ordinary life lying tangled in seaweed on a wild, windswept shore. A feeling of dread crept over him as he got closer. What he couldn't have known was that the contents of that suitcase were about to reignite a story the world had all but forgotten, and reveal a truth more horrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. This isn't just a tale of a disappearance, but a story about unimaginable loss, a mother's fight for answers, and a discovery that changed everything. Section 1. 1 year earlier, a dream vacation. Before the nightmare, there was a dream vacation. In this story, a single mother named Rachel had saved for 2 years to give her identical twin daughters, Millie and Rayleigh, the adventure of a lifetime. At just 3 years old, they were a whirlwind of pure energy and innocence. Millie was the quiet one, the observer who would study a butterfly with intense focus. Rayleigh was the bold leader, the first to charge into a playground or chase the waves. They were two halves of a whole, inseparable. For Rachel, they were her entire world. She worked 2 jobs, juggling everything for them. The cruise was meant to be their reward, a week of escape where their only job was to have fun. She pictured them splashing in the kids' pool, faces sticky with ice cream, eyes wide with wonder at the endless ocean. She booked a family-friendly cruise line, one famous for its safety and kids' programs, researching every last detail to make sure everything was perfect. As they boarded the massive ship, the atmosphere was electric. For Millie and Rayleigh, it was a floating city, a magical kingdom of new and exciting sights. Their first day was a happy blur. They explored the ship from bow to stern, ate pizza by the slice, and fell asleep in their bunk bed, exhausted and happy, lulled by the gentle rocking of the ship. Watching them sleep, Rachel felt a sense of peace. The cruise ship felt like its own self-contained world, a controlled environment where nothing bad could happen. It's a common feeling, the idea that a cruise ship is one of the safest places you can be with your family. She had chosen this vacation for that exact feeling of security. She let her guard down, allowing herself to relax in a way she rarely could. The next day was Pirate Day, and the girls had their little costumes all laid out. As Rachel tucked them in that second night, she whispered, "Tomorrow will be the best day ever." She had no idea that tomorrow would be the day their world would shatter. The morning of the third day started out just as perfectly. After a breakfast of Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes, they headed to the bustling pool deck. It was the heart of the ship, loud and vibrant, and filled with families. Rachel found a lounge chair near the toddler splash zone, a shallow, gated area designed for the youngest kids. It was a perfect spot with a clear view. For over an hour, she watched them squeal with delight as they stomped through fountains and went down a tiny water slide. They were happy, they were safe, and for a moment, all was right with the world. Section 2. The Vanishing. The moment that would change everything arrived without any warning. After an hour of playing, the girls were getting thirsty. The poolside cafe was only about 20 feet away from Rachel's chair, a straight line inside the enclosed pool area. She could see it perfectly. The girls were sitting together at the edge of the splash pad, building a little tower with blocks. Rachel stood up, her eyes still on them. "I'm going to get you some juice," she said cheerfully. "Don't move. I'll be right back. I can see you from here." They both looked up, nodded, and went right back to their game. The line at the cafe was short, just one person ahead of her. The whole thing took, by her later, agonizing calculation, no more than 90 seconds. She never took her eyes off the spot where she'd left them. She watched as she paid. She watched as the server filled 2 small cups with juice, and she watched as she turned to walk back. But when her eyes returned to the edge of the splash pad, the spot where her daughters had been sitting was empty. At first, she told herself they had just moved. She scanned the splash pad, her eyes darting from child to child. No Millie, no Rayleigh. Her heart started hammering against her ribs. She quickly circled the small, gated area, her calls of their names growing more and more frantic. Millie, Rayleigh. Other parents turned to look, their relaxed expressions turning to concern. It was a small, contained area. Where could they have gone? The little ripple of fear was quickly becoming a tidal wave of terror. She ran to the nearest crew member. "My daughters," she gasped, the words catching in her throat. "My twin girls. They're gone. They were right here." The crew member's professional smile vanished. He spoke into his radio, his voice calm but firm. "We have a possible missing child situation on the Lido deck." The words hung in the air, surreal and horrifying. What happened next was a blur. More crew members arrived and started a methodical search of the area. They asked Rachel for a description and for photos. Her hands trembled as she pulled up the most recent picture she'd taken just an hour before. 2 identical, smiling faces, hair still damp from the pool. The photo was sent to the ship's security team. An announcement crackled over the ship's PA system, a disembodied voice that sent a chill through everyone who heard it. "Attention, all passengers. We are currently looking for 2 missing children." The ship, once a place of joy, became a labyrinth of fear. The mood on the pool deck changed instantly. Parents grabbed their own children a little tighter. The search expanded, deck by deck, cabin by cabin. Rachel was escorted to a quiet, windowless room where a senior security officer asked her to recount every single second leading up to the moment she realized they were gone. How could they vanish so quickly? From a gated area? In broad daylight, surrounded by hundreds of people? Hours bled into one another. Security footage was reviewed. They found the clip of Rachel walking to the cafe. They saw Millie and Rayleigh sitting by the pool. But in the crucial moments that followed, the view was partially blocked by a decorative plant and the crowd. In one frame, the girls were there. In the next, they were gone. No sign of a struggle, no sign of anyone approaching them. They had simply disappeared. As day turned into night, the ship sailed on, and when it docked the next morning, the authorities were waiting. The vacation was over. The nightmare was just beginning. Section 3. The Cold Case. The investigation that followed was intense, but it hit one brick wall after another. Of the thousands of people on board, no one admitted to seeing anything. Theories swirled. Could they have somehow fallen overboard? Experts said it was highly unlikely for 2 3-year-olds to manage that without anyone noticing. Were they abducted by a passenger? Or, even more sinister, by a crew member who knew the ship's layout and its blind spots? The cruise line issued statements expressing their concern and full cooperation. But for Rachel, it was all just noise. The media descended. The story of the beautiful twins who vanished from a luxury cruise ship was everywhere. Rachel's private hell became public speculation. She pleaded for their return at a press conference, her voice breaking as she begged, "Please, if anyone knows anything, just bring my babies home." Eventually, the official search was scaled back, and the active investigation became a cold case. The media moved on. The world seemed to forget. But a mother never forgets. Rachel returned home to a life that had been drained of all its color. The twins' room remained untouched, a perfect, painful museum of a life that was suddenly paused. Months crawled by. Rachel became her own lead investigator, spending her nights online, scouring forums, and looking for any clue that might offer a sliver of hope. She learned everything she could about cruise ship security and the legal black holes of crimes at sea. She called the lead detective every single week, her voice a familiar, desperate presence on his voicemail. He was kind, but he never had anything new to tell her. No leads, no witnesses, no answers, just a cold, silent void. But a part of Rachel refused to believe they were gone forever. She had to believe she would find them. She had to be ready for the day they came home. For nearly a year, she lived in this agonizing limbo, trapped between a devastating past and an impossible future, waiting for a sign, a miracle, a phone call. And then, 10 months after her world ended, that call finally came. This story, whether it's real or not, taps into a primal fear for any parent. It's a situation no one ever wants to imagine. We explore compelling narratives like this one, the stories that stick with you and make you think. If you appreciate deep dives into stories that challenge and captivate, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us continue to bring these fascinating stories to light. Section 4. Return to the discovery. The call was from the lead detective. His voice was different this time, not patient and somber, but with a new, cautious urgency. "Rachel," he said, "I need you to come to North Carolina. A suitcase has washed ashore near Ocracoke Island." He paused. "It contains remains," he continued, his words careful, "and some personal items. We think it might be connected to your case." The world tilted. North Carolina? A suitcase? The words didn't make sense, but they ignited a terrifying mix of emotions inside her, a flicker of hope alongside absolute dread. An hour later, she was on a plane. The scene she arrived at was stark and surreal. The suitcase had been found by a local fisherman who saw it half buried in the wet sand. He knew right away that this was something he had to report. Local authorities had secured the area and taken the suitcase to a forensic lab. They waited for Rachel. The detective met her there, his face grim. He tried to prepare her for the worst. But how can you prepare a mother for something like this? The lab was cold and sterile. The suitcase sat on a steel table under harsh, bright lights, looking weathered and beaten by the sea. Rachel felt her knees go weak as a technician carefully unzipped the lid. The room fell silent. Inside, wrapped in damp clothing, were human remains. They were heartbreakingly small, but it was the other items packed inside that stole the breath from Rachel's lungs. There was a small, faded yellow blanket, the one Millie could never sleep without. Tangled in the fabric was a simple shell necklace, just like the one Rayleigh wore. And then she saw it. A red Minnie Mouse t-shirt, the very one Millie had on in the last photo Rachel ever took of her. A sob tore from her throat, the raw, primal sound of a mother's heart breaking. It was her. It was Millie. After 10 long months of torture, this was the answer. It was the worst possible answer, but it was an answer. The not knowing was over, replaced by the crushing weight of a horrifying truth. The forensic team confirmed what Rachel already knew in her soul. DNA provided a conclusive match. The remains belonged to Millie. The cause of death was determined to be suffocation. The case was now officially a homicide. The discovery of the suitcase, a cruel message delivered by the ocean, had blown the cold case wide open. But as investigators processed the heartbreaking evidence, they uncovered something else, something that defied all logic. Tucked into a waterproof pocket was a small plastic bag. Inside wasn't another tragic clue, but a small, unassuming USB drive. What was on that drive would not only identify a monster, but would also reveal the most shocking twist of all. Millie wasn't the only one in the Suitcase's story. Rayleigh, her twin sister, was still alive. Section 5. The horrifying truth. The USB drive was a bombshell. Forensic analysts carefully opened its contents, bracing for the worst. What they found was a series of dated photos and videos, a chilling digital diary of captivity. The earliest files showed both Millie and Rayleigh, alive but terrified, in a small, nondescript room, huddled together. But as the dates on the files moved forward, only one girl appeared in the images, Rayleigh. The final video was the most critical. It was dated just a few weeks before the suitcase was found. It showed Rayleigh, looking thin and pale, but alive. A man's voice, off camera, spoke to her. His tone was calm, almost gentle, which made his words all the more monstrous. He was coaching her, teaching her a new name, a new history, telling her what to say if anyone ever asked where she came from. It was a video of systematic brainwashing. The discovery was electrifying. They had proof of life. Rayleigh was out there somewhere. And they had her captor's voice. The investigation kicked into high gear. An FBI profile suggested the suspect was meticulous, patient, and likely someone who could appear harmless, a predator who planned the abduction with cold precision. The digital files contained hidden data pointing to a geographic area in Virginia, not far from Rachel's home. Then, a break. Local police in Virginia were investigating petty thefts from a storage facility. One unit, registered to a man named Douglas Carnes, was flagged. Inside his car, they found items that seemed disturbingly similar to materials being described in the national news about the case. That tip went straight to the FBI. Douglas Carnes was a man who lived under the radar. He was in his late 50s, a quiet man who ran a small chain of newsstands, with no major criminal record. He seemed utterly ordinary. But when the FBI raided his secluded rural property, they found the horrifying truth. In a soundproofed room in his basement, they found Rayleigh. She was alive, malnourished and deeply traumatized, but alive. When Rachel got the call, she collapsed. Her daughter, her sweet Rayleigh, who she was sure she had lost forever, was coming home. Their reunion was fragile and heartbreaking. Rayleigh barely spoke. She flinched at loud noises. She didn't even seem to recognize her own mother at first. Trauma had built a wall around her. But Rachel was patient. She held her, sang their old lullabies, and slowly, piece by piece, the little girl she had lost began to emerge. Through careful interviews with child psychologists, Rayleigh's story unfolded. She spoke of a magic man on the cruise ship who had lured them away from the pool deck to a storage area. He kept them hidden there for the rest of the cruise. Rayleigh described how her sister, Millie, got sick and wouldn't stop crying. The man, Carnes, grew angry and impatient. One night, he told Rayleigh to close her eyes. When she opened them, her sister was gone. He told her Millie had gone on a long boat ride and packed her away in a suitcase, which he threw overboard in the dead of night. For the next 10 months, he kept Rayleigh hidden, drilling a new identity into her head. Her testimony, the first-hand account of a survivor, was the voice for the sister she had lost. Section 6. Justice and Aftermath. In this telling of the story, the trial of Douglas Carnes was a somber, grueling affair. The prosecution built an ironclad case. They had the forensic evidence from the suitcase, the digital files from the USB drive, and most importantly, the testimony of Rayleigh. When the young girl took the stand, she pointed at Douglas Carnes and identified him as the magic man. Her testimony was harrowing but unshakable. She remembered the boat, her sister's yellow blanket, and the man who had taken everything. The jury found him guilty on all counts, including kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Rachel and Rayleigh, the verdict wasn't a victory, but a form of closure. Justice for Millie had been served, but their journey was far from over. They moved to a new town to start over. Rayleigh began intensive therapy. Some nights, she would wake up screaming, but with her mother's unwavering love, the light slowly started to return to her eyes. The laughter, which had been gone for so long, slowly started to fill their new home. The story goes on to say that the case sent shockwaves through the cruise industry, serving as a horrifying wake-up call and leading to sweeping security reforms. It supposedly became a case study at the FBI Academy. While these details add to the power of the narrative, there's no evidence this happened because, as far as we can tell, the case itself isn't real. So, is the story of Millie and Rayleigh true? All available evidence points to no. It appears to be a fictional story, a kind of modern, viral urban legend. But does that make it any less terrifying? The story has spread like wildfire online for a reason. It taps into a deep, universal fear. It's a mother's worst nightmare, a story of pure evil hiding in plain sight, in a place that's supposed to be safe. Fictional or not, the tale of the two sisters serves as a brutal reminder of the darkness that can exist in the world, and it highlights the incredible resilience of the human spirit. It leaves us with a lingering question. What is it about these dark stories that we find so compelling? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.